Hi, it's Jerry Roberts back with another edition of Newsmakers Journal of the Plague Year. Today is Thursday, August 20th. We are talking about the Democratic Convention with no less a figure than Politico political correspondent Carla Marinucci. How are you?
Hey, good to see you, Jerry.
You really improved your room rater since the last time you were.
It was a goal of mine, yes, to get onto room rater, and it worked.
That's
I'm
great.
happy. I made it.
All right. Well, I want to talk a little bit about covering the convention from the mysterious East Bay. But first, let's talk about what's going to happen tonight. Vice President Biden is going to give his long-awaited address. The whole convention is more or less a build-up to that. What are you looking for from him? What does he need to do?
I mean, I think Biden might be a letdown tonight after all that's come before. I mean, Barack Obama last night, Michelle Obama, and Jill Biden. Jill Biden was a great speaker. You know, I think it was what I think what we'll expect from Biden comes off of what we saw from Harris in a way. All through this convention, the Democrats have made the case that it is democracy itself that's at stake in this election. Your vote, your life depends on it. That's where they've gone, and we've seen speaker after speaker make the case that the Biden-Harris ticket will bring back decency, dignity to the White House, and Harris last night, diversity basically. And I think you'll see that same theme from Biden, introducing himself to voters who don't already know him after all these years. I mean, his whole life story, of course, in public service, with his family, his losses in his life. I think he's got to deliver energy. Some of his speeches, and I know I've heard this from Democrats, too low energy, too slow, not enough, especially when you compare it to, as Leon Panetta calls him, the reality show president. He has got to show vibrancy. And I think that is a key aim, especially compared to Kamala Harris last night. She did come off as like a happy warrior. She wasn't an attack dog. She introduced herself to voters, but Biden has got to show that kind of vibrancy and energy. Well, I think that's where Democrats are a little bit, worried. Is that gonna come across?
Yeah, no, and that there's a really interesting piece in Politico by John Harris, one of the founders, today about Biden and the age issue. When he went into the Senate back in the 70s, there's only 13 guys, and they were all guys still living. I mean,
it's true, but I think he's only a few years older than Trump. I mean, their age difference is not that much. They're the same generation. So I think the Trump people have tried to portray him as some kind of doddering old guy who can't remember his own name. And that, that just doesn't fly. But the fact is, he has a more low-key style. And particularly in the last couple of years, he has slowed down. There's no question about it, I think. And that is concerning to some Democrats. I've heard it, and they're worried about what are the debates going to look like. Because, in today's reality TV, landscape, you got to pour it on.
Yeah.
And
on the other hand, I mean, Trump is not exactly testimony for, linear sentences either.
No, he's not.
But, he gets away with that. It's interesting. I think, I've sort of seen three things coming out of the convention, three themes. One is, Trump is unfit for office. Joe is a nice guy.
Yeah.
And we're the party of diversity. And so I just wonder how he's going to try to balance that. Because in a sense, being slowed down a little bit, being a grandpa, just to put in a plug for grandpas, maybe that's not altogether the worst thing, particularly because you have.
No, I know. Listen, I've heard a number of Republicans say, Sleepy Joe, that sounds pretty good to me, compared to a guy who tweets 50 times a day going into 1 in the morning, right? I mean, it may not be such a bad thing to have a guy who's thinking about things, maybe not, reacting at the spur of the moment. I mean, Trump during Obama's speech was tweeting in capital letters live in real time, screaming at him. I mean, maybe Sleepy Joe's not so bad. So
He got stuck again and he couldn't figure out how to get it off, I guess. But it's interesting, because we always talk about, well, elections are either about hope or they're about fear. And obviously the Republicans are going to fear, Hunter Biden's a crook and, the socialists are going to be in charge and all this stuff. To a certain extent, the Democrats, especially, I thought, Tuesday night, tried to make it about hope. Oh, we're all going to feel good. We can laugh again and so on. But then, Obama came in with his speech last night, which was terrifying in a way.
It was. It is. There is a fear factor here. And like you said, it's fear of losing the democracy. It's fear, the very foundation of this country, they're saying, is at stake. That's the fear factor the Democrats are offering.
Yeah, that, we're on the brink of authoritarianism, which.
Yeah, they're mentioning him as an autocrat. And I think that's the fear that they're trying to ramp up voters to say, you've got to get out there. You cannot sit this one out. And they have to rev up these voters. And that's been a key message this week. So I think you're right. It'll be interesting to see how Biden, walks that tightrope. Yeah. He's got to tell his story. He's got to present himself as this contrast to Trump. And yet he's got to energize people to get out there and cast that ballot.
Yeah. Well, and, ever since, the world long ago in January and February, when we were in Iowa and New Hampshire, and people were laughing at the Biden campaign. Oh, he's over. It's all over.
Yeah.
And they just stuck to their plan. It's a fight for the soul of America. That's
right.
What we said on day one. That's what they said in every day. So I guess,
Yeah. And we'll see. And I think, he's got to be, he also has a very high bar, because any flub, any mistake is going to be seized on by the Trump people as evidence of some kind of cognitive issue. That's where they're going. I think that's a dangerous tactic for them too, considering President Trump's, problems with going down a ramp and, some of his pronunciations.
So, don't you think that accounts for a little bit of why Biden has kind of surged a little bit among older voters?
Yes, absolutely. I do. I think Trump has now had a series of events that suggest, and his own speaking repeatedly about the cognitive tests he's taken. And going on at length about how well he did in them. And the question is still being raised, like, well, why did he have to take them in the first place? It all raises questions, yes, and among older voters, that the healthcare issue, Social Security issue, and I think the divisiveness concerns a lot of older voters as well. So I think for all those reasons, he's losing his base there among older voters. That's right.
The underlying message of the death toll from the pandemic, which is, they were all old and sick, so they deserve to die anyway, which is my favorite little.
Yes, and that is who is dying. You're absolutely correct. And the numbers are so huge now, and will be more in November. This is where the older voters are waking up. And remember, those were the voters that were with Trump last time around.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Wednesday night. Kamala Harris from California, the junior senator from California, had her so-called coming out party. What'd you think? What grade?
She went right to California. I did hear, I have to say, I was watching with my son, I have millennial sons. Some of them thought it was too low key. They thought it was, one of them said it was boring. I have to say, why didn't she come out on the attack? As I said, I think what she needed to present was a picture of herself as a part of the American dream, the daughter of immigrants. She met, California. Her whole immigrant story and her whole family's immigrant story. She had to introduce herself. We in California know her. Millions of Americans don't know her. And what they saw was this happy warrior face. I think somebody it seemed accessible, who seemed relatable in a lot of ways. When you're talking about the millions of immigrants out there watching that, you saw them kick off her speech with a whole vignettes, all kinds of vignettes of girls, people of color, celebrating this moment in American history. She looks just like me. Those moments were very, very touching. And I think that was kind of what they were the portrait they were trying to present of her. I think she did that very well. We know she can be an attack dog. She did it in the Senate Judiciary Committee hearings, and she's done it on the stump. And this is where she'll be very valuable to Joe Biden, her experience being out there in Iowa, in all those swing states, pushing her own presidential campaign. She's got the experience on the stump, so she knows how to be an attack dog. But last night, she needed to introduce herself to Americans in an accessible way.
Yeah.
And I think she did it very well.
Well, and you have covered her far more than I have, but for 20 years, I gotta say, she smiled more last night than in all the other times I've ever seen her put together. I mean, where was that coming from?
Yeah.
You find that a little strange?
She did. I mean, I think that was part of the goal, to look. And by the way, talking at length about her role as a mom, as a stepmom, to Doug Emhoff's 2 children. That's something, we really haven't heard a lot from her as attorney general or district attorney. It was always this hard-charging prosecutor, top cop in California. She never really talked that much about her family situation back in those roles, I think. And now she's talking about, doing homework with the stepkids and going to soccer games, and her role as Mamala. I think that's an interesting thing. They're really, that kind of emphasis on her domestic life, we didn't hear very much in her roles, in her elective roles in California.
Yeah. And, the other interesting thing to me was sort of the, when she began, I think there was what am I trying to say? It's been a challenge all week to deliver a speech on Zoom. I mean,
yes.
And so,
I have to say, that we're all waiting to see how that was going to work out. And I have to say, I think the Democrats have pulled this off, at least up until tonight, very well, in terms of their, and Adisu Demusi, who was the campaign manager for Gavin Newsom and for Cory Booker's presidential campaign. He's one of the convention managers. This has gone off really without any kind of hitch, in terms of showing the patchwork, the beautiful patchwork that is California and America, in terms of the states, in terms of all the different people who make it up, the faces, the diversity is there. And it's shown in kind of in an entertaining way. The roll call of states was super entertaining. We'd be interested to see how the Republicans are going to match this thing.
Yeah, Bill Carrick had a great line, because they did give Kamala a large ballroom to speak in, and she got the rug and all that. But when they were like cutting away to show what I guess was the poll reporters in front of her, Bill said that he thought the only person they would show sitting there would be Bob Mulholland, but who you and I know is the world's greatest California Democrat.
And it's been to every event in the Democratic Party's history. Exactly. No, that's, I'm kind of interested to hear your thoughts, Jerry, having been to many. We as reporters miss this stuff. Yeah, we do. But when you see it on television, you realize how many more people can participate. How many more people, you're cutting out. I've had a lot of people say to me, you know what? They've cut out all the BS and the long bloviating speeches that nobody listened to anyway, and they've gotten it down to the essence, and maybe that's the way it's got to go.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of these video packages that they're presenting, they've been presenting for years in the convention hall, but nobody's paying any attention.
Nobody was watching.
Because we're all talking to each other. But the thing that really strikes me is that you do listen to the speeches. I mean, that's always been a thing with me. It's like what they say matters. And you have to listen, because that's what they're doing. And it's really boiled down into the essence of what of what the message is. And so I think that part of it, at least.
Yeah, and they've moved it. It's been fast moving. They've cut the speeches down, and they've just cut out a lot of the ancillary stuff, and it's down to the essence of the message. And I think that that's really important. That's been I think that's an improvement. I don't think conventions are going to be the same after this.
Oh, I don't either.
You
So
can't-
here's one thing I'm very interested to see how Biden handles tonight. You heard Kamala last night talk about structural racism and Black Lives Matter and systemic racism, which is, that's sort of the thrust of the thing. The only time we've heard Biden in a lot of these clips talking about the police, he said, and I'm not quoting, but this was the essence of it, we got to get rid of the few bad ones and, take care of the other ones, which is not, that's the few bad apple theory. That's not the theory of Black Lives Matter. So I'm really interested to see if there's some distance between him and Kamala on that issue, how he's going to address that tonight, if he's going to pick up.
You're right, because this is exactly where Trump is putting his attack, that Kamala and Biden want to defund the police, which is not true, but they're portraying them as this radical socialist, they're going to destroy America as we know it. If you look at the Trump campaign material, it's pretty eye-opening. And whether Biden is going to address some of those main attacks, I think that's going to be interesting. Where is he on the issue of police reform, defund the police, and the social unrest that's going on in America? Where is he on the COVID crisis? That's going to be the other big issue that he, and healthcare for America. And then on the economic front, this incredible recession that America is facing right now. And many people think the effects haven't even been really felt. That hundreds of thousands of businesses are dying every day as this thing goes on. And the effects won't be felt until the next term of office, whoever wins. So all of those are big issues that he's going to have to deal with tonight and address the Trump attacks on him in each of those categories.
And then, of course, kind of simmering beneath it, and sometimes not so simmering, is Trump going to try to steal the election? This whole thing that's going on with the post office. And the other thing that really struck me is you have these, major speakers, President Obama, Michelle Obama, Kamala Harris, saying, don't forget to text, 30 whatever it is, and get your ballot ready and take 2 steps to the right and put it in the post. I mean, it's like this get out the vote campaign that they're running, with these major voices. So what did you take away from the president's speech, from President Obama's speech? What'd you think?
That was such a sobering speech, and I think it reflects. I've talked to a lot of Democratic strategists in the last couple of days who have said, like, they're worried that that Trump may really just try to steal the election. And one of them told me his thought is that you'll see phony ballots from abroad, from other countries, Putin, whatever, start flooding the system, and that will allow Trump to claim widespread voter fraud. This one strategist said that is exactly the playbook that Putin has used in Russia to accuse his opponents of fraud and corruption.
Wow.
Already, by the way, Attorney General Barr and President Trump have suggested that foreign countries can get in there and throw phony ballots out. And Eric Swalwell said to me, that's kind of like saying, Russia, are you listening? Hey, you guys want to get in on this? I mean, making it essentially an invitation to other countries. So Democrats have a lot of things, there's a lot of stuff to handle. Other Democrats have told me, remember, in Michigan, it was 2 votes per precinct that put Trump over the top there. They're worried that small changes, hacking into the systems in some of these states, changing, for instance, a middle initial, one digit on a address. And one strategist told me, look, You identify the, say, overwhelmingly Black districts in some of these key states. You go in and change a couple of registrations so that when people come to vote, they're told, well, you know, I'm sorry, that doesn't match. You can't cast a ballot. And many African Americans, you know, there's been roadblocks thrown in their way before, and they may just go home or not vote. A few votes like that in a few key districts, and that's what some Democrats are suggesting is another thing that could happen. So, yeah, the actual vote and the mail-in vote is one thing, but our Democrats are looking at this on many different levels.
I imagine they have
concern.
I imagine they have armies of highly paid lawyers who are standing by in key states. I mean, the election's about Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. I mean, let's face it.
In Florida, maybe. Yeah, right, exactly. I mean,
Biden doesn't need Florida. Trump needs Florida, but
yeah, correct. I mean, no, I think you're right. Armies of lawyers, yes, but on the issue of hacking into the voting system, I've heard people say, you know, we know that Trump has thrown opposition in front of efforts to fund, you know, secure systems. He has been opposed to efforts to keep those systems, you know, protected from hacking. So this is an issue that Democrats are looking at, and they're worried about that. And on the mail-in voting thing, yeah, he's on this every day, and that can. Republicans are starting to worry that could hurt them as well. Look, we know that in the 25th district here in California, Republicans pushed mail-in voting. And they were about to launch an entire ballot harvesting program that the California Republican Party.
They won the special. I don't know if they'll win.
Yeah, the special, and of course Republicans won the special election there, and partly due to mail-in voting. I mean, due to mail-in voting, everyone voted it by mail in that election. So the fact is that Republicans are worried that this campaign that the president is on could hurt them in many districts as well. I think that's going to be interesting to watch.
All right. So let me just real quick get a couple things more from last night, because it seemed like it was sort of, you know, this was a night for the base. They talk about gun safety, climate change, immigration, women. You know, one of the things that didn't get a lot of commentary, but I was just blown away by, was Gabby Giffords. Former.
I mean, that was a heartbreaker to watch, and from all accounts, I mean, she worked months with therapists to be able to do that. I mean, she was so
shot in the face,
so devastatingly injured in that attack. I thought that moment was an incredible moment. I have to say, I also thought the African-American mother who talked about the long-term effects of the gunshot on her young son, that was a sobering one. I mean, how she has to feed him and bathe him and do everything. It was story. And then the other thing was that I think she's 11, 12, that little girl from also from Arizona, whose mom was a dreamer, was taken away. Her dad served. That's another one.
And voted for Trump. I mean, that's been some of the best stuff, is I voted for Trump. I mean, the Republican voters against Trump and so on.
Yes, I absolutely think, and it's just going to be so interesting how do Republicans counter this next week in terms of this army of Republicans who have spoken, you know, Cindy McCain, you know, Colin Powell, Meg Whitman, Jerry.
Meg.
I mean, Meg Whitman, who spent $144 million of her own money here in California trying to beat Jerry Brown for governor. And there she was, you know, from Joe Biden. All that stuff is just interesting. The Republicans are not going to be able to counter on that front.
But how is that playing? How is that playing with the lefty activist base, though? I mean, you know, a lot of.
They weren't particularly happy. I got to say that John Kasich got to speak because he's been very anti-choice. Many see him as anti-LGBT.
And Michael Bloomberg tonight is getting a prime spot right before Biden. He must have decided he must have promised to write a big check. But seriously, because you got AOC, whose appearance, and I don't know whether that was by choice or whether that's what they asked her to do, was to second Bernie Sanders' nomination.
Yeah, she had to do that that was a protocol, that was a procedural thing that someone had to do. And I think, look, in her 1 minute, she showed she is somebody to watch in this party. She has incredible clout and incredible influence. There was a lot of young voters, and I've been speaking to a lot of young Democrats here. They were really angry that she only got 1 minute. But the fact is, immediately afterwards, she right away congratulated Joe Biden.
Well, and she straightened out NBC.
Internal firing squad, the circular firing squad in the Democratic Party is not happening this year.
Well, you can't do it on Zoom. I mean, how? I suppose
we used to love those meetings where we'd go in and we'll watch them all scream.
I mean, I guess you could Zoom bomb somebody. I suppose it's possible, but I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that the party structure wants to keep it like this forever.
But I think in many cases the Democrats have decided, even those on the very far left have decided, look, job one is beating Trump. Then they can have the circular firing squad afterwards. Remember, Kamala Harris is not the choice of progressive Democrats. A lot of very progressive Democrats did not want her. They wanted Elizabeth Warren and other choices. They thought, as California's top.
Nancy Pelosi apparently didn't.
Yeah.
What's the story behind that? Was all the San Francisco Democrats who actually know her trying to shiv Kamala there?
It was kind of interesting. The week before her nomination was announced, there were a couple of stories, including in Politico. Chris Dodd was quoted as saying, she had no remorse going after Biden. There were a lot of
he apparently said that to John Burton, and John Burton was the source. Is that what I heard? Is that true?
Remember, John Burton's daughter Kimmy was going for DA in San Francisco. There was a little bit of a there were
all politics.
There's a long time issue there. Yeah, I think that there were a lot of forces in California that supported Kamala, but certainly there was a big group of people who had issues with her, and that's California, and that's the Democratic Party in California. But I think most of those people who had issues with her now are
they're on board. Yeah,
they're staying.
Starting with Phil Trounstein.
That's right. Wait a minute, what did you guys call her in Cowboys?
I can't remember now. All right, let me ask you one more thing. I think this was in your pieces.
Queen Kamala, I can't remember. Yeah.
Okay. I got a whole file of stuff. Don't worry.
Yeah, I know you do. Okay.
So, interesting thing you had in your piece, though, the biggest loser, you didn't say this is my word, but the biggest loser of the week is Gavin Newsom, because checkmate, baby.
Checkmate is right.
Whether Biden wins or loses, Kamala is first in line to run in 2024, 2028. Gavin played it that he would be better positioned to be the governor than the Senate. They could have divided up.
That's right. That's right. He jumped into that one.
Pandemics and lightning and fires. It's so strong.
People have said now, you know what? California governor is not the best place to run for the White House, because why? It's like a country. And you've got all these problems that you always have to deal with. You can't go out of state to campaign. Maybe U.S. Senator is the better place to run. And maybe Gavin didn't calculate that at the time. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, at his, Willie Brown told me at his 40th birthday party in San Francisco, they all had a toast to Gavin Newsom running for.
Yeah, that was in your White House. That was great detail.
That was his agenda. But doesn't mean it can't happen. Let's be honest. You've covered politics a long time. 4 years, 8 years, that's a lifetime. Yeah. Who knows what is going to happen in this country by that time. And, there's, as we said, the next, if they make the White House, Biden and Harris, they have an aircraft carrier to turn around. It's just a huge lift. And maybe it'll be viewed as successful and maybe not. And certainly, whenever Kamala runs for the White House, she's going to get challenges, probably from the left, from her own party. We'll see. But nothing is certain in this world, certainly not in politics.
All right, I got to ask you this and put you on the spot a little bit.
No.
Covered politics in San Francisco. Read about, from Herb Cain, we all learned about Willie Brown and Kamala, and this is Willie Brown and all this other stuff. Forget that. Here's the question. Willie, 2 weeks ago, writes his column, my favorite column in the Chronicle, saying she should turn down the vice presidency. What was that about? What was the story behind that one? I assume
I have just had lunch with Willie Brown recently, last week, and hey, he's gone from predicting she would never run to she would never be chosen. He's been all over the board on this one, and I think he's taken a lot of heat from people saying, "Would you please stay out of the picture?" Because let's face it, in the last couple of days, I mean, Kamala Harris has been subjected to some of the most misogynistic and sexist.
Well, that's coming. The Willie stuff is coming for sure.
I've covered this a long time. You have too. I haven't seen the level of stuff that's out there on her. It's disgusting. And so Willie knows this, and I think his point was maybe to just keep himself away from the whole VP thing. I saw him the day before she was picked, and he was certain that she was going to be picked. And he told me that morning, the day before it was announced, that he knew a supplier who had already been given the order for 3 million Harris Biden buttons. So it was a lock. So he's still going to be, I think, sort of an insider who always is in touch with her.
And they talk. They talk.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
They do. I mean, history goes back a long way.
Well, and he still has the single greatest line of the year, which is, we had a perfect relationship. She was in love with me and I was in love with me too.
You can't get better than that. Willie
All
Brown.
right. Hey, listen, Carla, thanks for your time. You promise to come back next week? You're going to come?
Absolutely. Totally. I'm always with you, Jerry. As
All
always.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I can't wait to see what they're going to do.
Yeah, we've got to review this together. Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, my dear.
Always good to be with you, Jerry. Thanks.